The unity of God. The unity of God. This is about holding the truths about God together in a way that avoids contradiction and maintains the truths that are clearly taught in Scripture. Looking at this attribute of the unity of God, we actually look at other attributes and we consider how they hold together. So, recapping some of the ones that we've done so far, the immutability of God and the independence or the aseity of God. Look at this with me. So, the immutability, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. Now, compare that with several others. The independence of God, Job 41:11. Who is a claim against me that I must pay? Everything under the heavens belongs to me. Or the love of God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. 1 John 4:8. The mercy of God. With the merciful you show yourself merciful. 2 Samuel 22:6. And the omnipresence of God from Jeremiah 23. Am I only a God nearby, declares the Lord, and not a God far away? Who can hide in secret places so that I cannot see them, declares the Lord? Do I not fill heaven and earth, declares the Lord? Well, let's look at some illustrations to help us think about all these other attributes together and how we form this doctrine of the unity of God. Now, before we look at the illustrations, we just need to keep this in mind, is that illustrations, comparisons, and analogies always break down at some point. To some degree, they're going to limp, but they are helpful to turn the wheels of our mind in the right direction to think about how we hold all these truths together. So here's a question. When we're considering the immutability, the independence, love, mercy, omnipresence, just to name a few, is God all these things at once? And how so? Perhaps it works this way, that God is only these things in part, as though we could divide God up into little slices, that he's a little bit immutable here, he has a little bit independence here, he has some love here and mercy here. Or perhaps that he is only one thing at once, and when he is expressing his immutability, he ceases to be independent? Is that how it works? Or is God taking on new attributes? As though God is all those things, but he will one day add to his character and have a new characteristic, a new attribute. Let's come back to a definition to help us guide and navigate through thinking about this systematically. The unity of God, simply defined as this: God is not divided into parts, yet we see different attributes of God emphasized or expressed at different times. Okay, let's explain this. God is simple, but not to say that he is not complex or unintelligent or foolish, but that one attribute is sometimes emphasized over another as we experience God. Yet God possesses unity to his character. So look at 1 John 4:8 and 1 John 1:5 side by side with me. The first passage: anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. And the second: this is the message we have heard from him and proclaimed to you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. When we're saying there's a unity to God's character, we're saying that he's both those things, light and love. But it is not to say that God is love and the reverse is also true. We're not saying love is God or light is God. That doesn't make sense. Actually, it sort of sounds a little bit like pantheism. And then we lose the distinctions that we talked about in our first lesson between the transcendence and immanence of God. No, God is not a collection of attributes that we add together. He's not a bunch of them, nor is he the division of all those into like little bitty parts, where he's part love over here and part merciful over here. God's whole being includes all of his attributes. So he is entirely loving, entirely merciful, entirely just without detracting from those previous attributes at all. So it's not this. It's not attribute 1 plus attribute 2 equals God. It's not as if God is a circle and we can divide him up. We should not err to think that God is loving at one point in time and ceases to be at another, although it may be expressed differently. So here's the question that we must deal with. Why does Scripture speak of one attribute at a time then? And the answer is this, and this comes back again to the first lesson. Between the Creator and the creature, there's a distinction. He is the Creator, and he relates to us through the way that we interact with the world, through our finite experience as creatures. God is bigger than we can possibly comprehend, but in little bites, we can see glimpses and get a sense that he is so much more magnificent than we think. And if we detract from one attribute to make one attribute greater, we run the risk of losing the unity of God's character. We need to hold all these truths together in a way that avoids contradiction and maintains the truths of Scripture as they are clearly taught. God is unified.